Yeah, I was obviously prepared to uh, run you through a journey, obviously in a short form, of what we've experienced in building this company. And I think it gives me great privilege and a pleasure to say that it's on the back of raising our Series A, and we have funds in the bank and a bit of jet fuel now. In an economy like this, it's a difficult thing to do. But on the back of that, I'd like to highlight the story, right? What we went through and how we managed to discover AI was useful in the path that we were treading, and not just a fad, right? So I'm going to just. Is this not working, guys? Yeah, okay. Yeah, ready to go back? Yeah, I'm pressing it. Okay, cool. So yeah, we started this company in 2012, and I think I just burnt my fingers with the first avatar of Edge Networks, trying to build a digital education platform for students and employers. And I totally didn't have the tenacity or the perseverance to follow through on that, lost my entire team. It's one of those startup offices in 2010-11 that had cross ventilation for air conditioning. And you know, it was a time when it's difficult to attract talent. Not that it isn't now, but difficult to attract talent into an office, especially a startup that had 3 basic tables and chairs. We would literally watch people coming in and then looking at the office and running away and run after them. But this was the time that we decided that this wasn't working for us, and we did this major pivot. We had lost our head of technology at the time, and a colleague of mine was still our current head of operations. Myself were non-technologists. He was from the HR background, and I was just thinking up ideas on the fly. Figured out that we could build an application on the back of the problem that existed, which is a global problem, to read a resume and read a job description and mimic the human brain. And this was a mundane process. I mean, we were calling people to our office. We didn't want to read through resumes. And I found out from a lot of people that they had the same problem. You get 100 resumes, how many are you going to read, right, consistently? And I think this slide sort of articulates that we had hit upon a global problem. So what we did was we said, okay, there are a lot of tools out there that had the ability to sort of parse, look at keywords, count them, and honestly, they did a good job for the time. But the time had passed when that efficiency also was not good enough, right? And people were articulating around the solution and starting to game it, and there was a huge validation problem in the system. We found that just making all of this go away by becoming more smart through the machine to build consistency, right, was the key objective of our application. Could we build something around learning across patterns? And this is machine learning. Could we look at enough data? Could we build enough signals? Could we understand enough markers to start saying that we would build something that was consistent and quick, right? And really, it's not just about the application being intelligent, it's about the infrastructure, the architecture to make sure that you can drive this really quick. We sort of stumbled on building a platform with the first phase of it. And like I said, AI is a cool term, and we are honestly not doing robotics or autonomous sort of cars, but we sure as hell are doing things that are trying to mimic the human brain in terms of the patterns that the brain goes through, the data that the brain processes to reach that stage of, say, aha, I know what I'm looking for. So some of it was, I think, gold when we realized that the problem to be tackled was one of data, and data meant volumes. Could I look at enough data to build this intelligence at the back end? Because the other problem that we had was, if we had to look at the context of the information at that time, we had to have the power of inference. And what we were faced with is that data existed in large enterprise companies. And you're talking about, in the Indian context, the likes of the Wipros, the HCLs, the TCSs, the Cognizants would hire in volumes, right? Now, we did go to Wipro. We met the global head of talent acquisition. She thought it was a cool idea. She gave us half an hour after 2 months. It was painstaking to get to her. You got to talk to the right people. And finally, they gave us an audience. And we said, okay, it's a cool problem to solve. It's a cool technology to have. It would solve a big pain point of theirs. But they had, you know, legacy systems which in the curve of technology and the way it changes, the businesses don't adopt really well. I mean, sometimes they're close to what government goes through in terms of change. It's slow, it thinks, and it sort of figures out on who the first mover is. They have data across multiple systems in different repositories, and you're trying to figure out whether you can integrate into all these levels. And we were this application still reading resumes and reading job descriptions and doing a talent acquisition match, right? We were looking at the machine learning curve, right? We wanted to sort of figure out whether we could go ahead and solve this problem using machine learning. And what Wipro did was, they said, listen, I'm going to take you guys and I'm going to look at a bigger problem that we have, which is internal, right? Can we look at the 150-odd thousand employees that we have inside the organization, and can we look at the 18 to 20,000 job demands that we raise every month, and can we look at matching those people to those jobs, which is morphed into a solution called workforce optimization for us, right? So talent acquisition is the sexy part, where we go out, we automatically source resumes, but the more unsexy problem, but really relevant problem, is can we optimize the internal workforces? Can we look at all the unstructured data in the form of work experience summaries, project experience summaries, courses and certifications that people do, performance appraisals, and start understanding more about the individual. And all of this data sits on disparate systems. Now, one is machine learning, right? Looking at patterns, learning biases, good and bad, trying to sort of improvise on those biases and interpret, and a lot of it is supervised. And then you say, how can you get to the unsupervised state and start building deep learning models? So somewhere in 2015, actually towards the end of 2015, is when we invested in deep learning. And today, I can say, and it was in the back of the analytics that we were doing, the interpretation of the data for our own needs, that we morphed into the second solution, which was actually the third solution, which is workforce planning. We were able to help businesses understand, not just from a descriptive standpoint, but a prescriptive standpoint, how they can move forward in specific directions based on demand and supply forecasting, right? So we had workforce optimization, we had talent acquisition, and we had workforce planning. Now, since we could understand what people fitment is against job roles dynamically, we also could understand the gaps. And there stood another, or the fourth pillar that we had, which is talent transformation. And that's really where we started looking at specific software as a service models to deliver this. Now, to be honest, workforce optimization and talent acquisition is something that we've got baked. We've learned the models. Our graph speaks volumes about how we can optimize for the IT industry, the banking industry, but workforce planning and talent transformation is still in the making. We have a lot to learn there. So what we went on to do, right? We had a services model in the form, I'll give you an example. Workforce planning was, hey, you want certain things done, we'd go and build it out for you. But what we realized very quickly is we wanted it to roll out to every customer in the same manner because the problem was similar, the data points were similar. Could we productize it? Could we build a platform and start using it for multiple areas of planning, right? Could we look at skill shortages by customer? Could we look at uptrending skills, mid-trending skills, downtrending skills? Could we look at different geographies and skills like a heat map? We could do all of this, and we could also productize it, build it out as a platform, build a data lake, and help people do their own thing. So for us, the journey was to build a software as a service model and start looking at how we can take this into a product persona. Now, just to give you an indication, and this is a rough description of what happens at the back end, we have something we call the edge graph, which has demographic information, industry information, skill information, courses and certifications, and occupations. And an occupation, for instance, is like a welder will have 98 different titles, right? A pipe rack operator on an oil rig in India would be different in terms of skills to a pipe rack operator in the US or Canada, right? It would differ in terms of the kind of skills over time. So if you baseline it by time, now the whole graph starts morphing, right? The kind of skills are very technology related today. The kind of skills start looking different depending on the kind of country that you're going to go to and the type of job that you're obviously pursuing. So industries have different ways of looking at things. Healthcare versus oil and gas, but hazmat as a safety standard, probably similar. So we were able to start building a very powerful graph of skills, courses and certifications, titles, industries, and also demographic information with the baseline as time. Now this all seems great, right? So we can rule the world, we can go to any industry and do this. We're very good at doing this for the IT industry, very good at doing this for the banking industry, sort of creeping into acquiring our first healthcare customer, as well as looking at how we can do this for one of the retail giants. I'm not really good at this. Animation coming through. Well done. Now, what we sort of figured is that, you know, for us to constantly stay relevant, and I was just talking to someone I met outside who I'd met, I think, about a year ago at a Your Story event. And he pitched an intelligent assessment platform to me. Now, I know for a fact that he was doing a completely different business model. And he listened so keenly to what I was saying. I said, aha, I can do what he's doing. And I can do it better. And I said, hey man, you're doing exactly what I'm doing. And he's doing it. So the world is changing so fast. Right now, I'm going to potentially partner with him and make sure that he does what he wants to do with us, right? But that's really the way it is. And I'm talking about reading resumes, reading job descriptions, talking about psychometric analysis with pictures. Somebody is saying that I can do it with eye movements, and I can assess different data points, and I can become cooler than you so fast, right? So what we have to do is we have to figure out how we can innovate. And companies that need to be relevant tomorrow are the companies who invest in innovation, right? Now that's a no-brainer, and you have established companies from the GEs of the world, the Amazons of the world, investing in innovation. But for us as a startup, very important to feel the pain or the problem and start looking at how solutions can become a lot more agile. Talking to our customers, validating that our models on the deep learning side are just not cool, but being applied so that artificial intelligence is not just something that is well brandished, but a reality to our customer because of the impact. There is an ROI that can come out. And they can look at us and say, hey, you know what? You can now start doing a performance-based or an outcome-based pricing for us. And we can say, okay, we'll bet on it. And we'll charge you higher because we're taking the risk with you on a business that we don't understand, but we're going to solve a problem that we do understand. And that's really where AI, for us, has started creeping into our success model. It's very critical now for a company like us. Now, when we raised our Series A, one of the things that we learned on the journey, because the investors really peeled the onion, right? They opened out everything and said, let me look at your engine. I think the reality of it was looking at the value that you can create to the customer, the validation. So a couple of things while you go through this journey of AI-fying your product is to understand tremendously the value of innovation and the value of applying it to validation. to make sure that you're getting feedback that will resonate with an ROI. Otherwise, it doesn't matter, right? You can think it's the coolest thing, but it will not work as a business. These are some of the stakeholders that we sell AI to, right? All of us get AI, right? We get the word. We sort of obviously, have gray areas when we think of machine learning. We have gray areas when we think of deep learning, and we have grayer areas when we think of AI, right? And what the difference between each stage is. But I think what has happened as a sort of fact of life is that everybody is starting to embrace the value of AI. And they're now starting to say, hey, where can I start to AI-fy my business with products that make sense? And obviously, enterprises are becoming a lot more open. Banks are looking at changing legacy systems and shifting to dynamic systems that make sense, that will collect data, will interpret data, will start becoming a lot more relevant in terms of creation of the data as well, right? So I think a lot of it is where we go and talk to the CIO, talk about our technology, talk to the buyers like the CHRO and the CEO, who are our stakeholders when it comes to what the value proposition is, and now they all understand the technology that we deliver on. Yeah, so I think the key message is simplification here. And on both sides you have data science, which is really the bread and butter, and obviously the first-class citizens in our company, and the domain expertise, where we don't feign to understand the HR domain, but we do understand the problem that we're solving. So every one of our engineers in the application team, our DevOps team, our data science team, understand the domain, right? The reason is we've learned to understand the problem that we're solving. Otherwise, you can't build a good product. And we have started going through various areas. We started looking at the social value of it, where we can look at all of the content on the social side and start making sense of it, where we can cross-validate information across the resume, a couple of the social sites, a couple of other people like them to be able to build a value in the profile. We're able to build advanced demand management systems, where we can tell you what kind of skills are available across what region, and we can also tell you how you sort of shift your demand depending on what is available out there in the market, right? You always need people to come in at the right time. I think this is something that we're able to do because of the kind of technology that we bring to the forefront. Now, all of it being dynamic is not AI. A lot of it is still at the machine learning or the pattern recognition space. But when we get to AI and we're starting to become a lot more intuitive, augment the value of a recruiter today, augment the value of a hiring manager today, make it more self-service, because there are a lot of these tasks today. And I was talking to one of my friends who's in the HR space, and he was telling me, engaging with the candidate, a recruiter does this really well, right? And talking to them about what the future of their career is, their individual career, their personal success tied to the organization's success is what the recruiter should do. But the conversation that they're having today is about the compensation, about whether they want to join the company. It's sort of very base level on the check boxes. And that's why the machines have come in and said, listen, we're going to take all that stuff that are check boxes, get you to tell us whether you're interested in joining the company, get you to tell us at what salary band you are right now, so I can know all that information. But the conversation that I want to have is figure out whether you're going to fit into the culture of the company, whether you're going to be able to do the job, whether you're a doer. And machines are able to figure out patterns that allow you to understand, based on the people that you have inside the organization, who you're going to hire, right? So I think that is the level of augmentation that we're starting to deliver on. And that's, I think, not just because of the gaps that we see in the current system, but because we can start taking a lot of that grunt work out of it and making it a lot more responsive. So AI is something that we will all dive into, but I think machine learning and deep learning is doing a lot of that stuff. So here's where we sort of play the analytics part of it, the talent transformation of the career progression part of it, the optimization of internal workforce, as well as talent acquisition. I think these are the areas that we've been able to sort of AIfy as much as we can. I'm not getting better at this. Yeah, so all of our stakeholders who I showed you before, who were buying from us, are now data-driven, right? And they want to understand the future 30, 60, 90 days out. And that's like short term. They also obviously understand 2-year and 3-year outlooks, but everybody wants to understand in the short term what the impact of quality and consistency of a huge investment is, which is human capital. And a lot of our money as businesses always goes into people. And we now have the stakeholders looking at data. We have the CIO understanding open source, the CIO understanding what's relevant to the business, the CIO understanding where compliance or security is going to be hit in a real sense versus 5 years ago, I remember when I went to a large enterprise company, the CIO said, "You'll come in over my dead body," right? But you know, as luck has it, the CIO was replaced. The fact is that businesses or demand automatically makes people change, right? And need drives that behavior because we can't tolerate an inconsistency that we have to live with. We work over it. And I think a lot of the stakeholders that I am meeting today are looking at the problem with an angle or a lens that is AI ready, right? They're starting to embrace it and they're starting to think in the right sense. And we as a business have not just, like I said, need drives behavior. We were at the simple sort of machine learning models. We started looking at deep learning as we started understanding how unsupervised learning can start making benefit to us on the analytics side. I think we are starting to move towards AI because it's a need driving behavior. Demand is driving our ability to deliver to that kind of need. So guys, I'm glad you listened to me, right? This is what we do as a business. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I'll be around.